Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're going to be talking about the second annual Dyslexic Edge Conference, which is going to be at George Mason University this March 22nd, which is a Saturday, and it's an all-day conference. Joining me to talk about the conference are two of its organizers, Shannon Duncan, who is a founding member of Decoding Dyslexia Virginia, and Krista Gauthier, who is the executive director of Sliding Doors. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks
This will be my second year participating as well. I hosted the children's panel, the students panel. They're not all children. They're students panel last year. And so you expanded it from a half-day conference to a full-day conference. And so Shannon, tell me a little bit about how Decoding Dyslexia Virginia, which has been very active this year. I know you're very involved in working on legislative agenda items this year as well. Is working to help expand the conference. You know, how did you, and both of you will address this, did you decide to collaborate with the university too to host it?
We did. Well, Decoding Dyslexia, for folks who aren't aware of Decoding Dyslexia Virginia has been around since 2013. We are a grassroots movement of parents that support parents, and we ultimately aim to connect parents to resources faster than we got them, make sure that decision makers in our community are aware of best practices. And we know that there are some tenets in states that really ensure that our kids, students with dyslexia, get what they need, and that would be that they're identified early, that their teachers are trained in evidence-based remediation, that the remediation that is used is, as I said, in fact, evidence-based but delivered with fidelity, and that they have access to assistive technology. And that is important really across the board. We are one of 50 chapters within the nation, but in fact I think there's 8, another extra 8 internationally, which is fantastic.
And you guys have quite the reputation. I was at South by Southwest EDU conference last year and ran into someone,
Texas.
I went to, Texas, and they were like, oh, Virginia. I'm like, I know all the folks in Virginia. And they're like, they're doing great work, and you really have, because it's been a long, hard, often frustrating slog to get people to pay attention to this unmet need, students who are not being supported in public schools. It wasn't until you all hosted a town hall they got a lot of it.
You were a moderator.
Right. But after you did that, then Fairfax County hired its first specialist.
Yes.
So there is a cause and effect between organizations, and you're an all-volunteer organization.
We are.
Of parents who get out there and advocate, raise the visibility of the issue, educate people on the issue, and that's one of the things the Assistant Secretary of Education had said when he came to the town hall. It's not that people don't care about your issue, it's like it's just not on their radar, and they don't understand it, and they don't know what you're asking for. And so your legislative work has certainly, every single year, produced results as far as tools, resources, diagnostic tools, funding, to identify students earlier, which is really critically important. The wait to fail model, of which all three of us sitting here are very, very familiar with the wait to fail model, is not working, and no student and no parent should have to be put through that. So Krista, now your story is very different because you have a very targeted program, recognizing that many students with dyslexia also have a lot of talent, interest, and ability in science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yeah, so when we started Sliding Doors, we just celebrated 3 years, which I think the first time I was with you, I had just done about 6 months, so it's exciting to be here again. And so one of the things, so the whole organization was inspired by my daughter's journey. And when we took that journey with her, we recognized that not only is this waiting to fail model not working, right, and that so many students are suffering because of it, but they're also very gifted, as you said, in those STEM fields. And so we wanted to create a program that not only provided the intervention at a cost affordable level to our families, but also that really highlighted their strengths, because as we always say, that the reading is equal to the confidence, right? We want them graduating from our 2-year program not only reading but confident that they can be that they can excel in school. And so, our program actually divides the time equally between reading intervention. and STEM enrichment. And part of that mission is to include and to create a rather large network. We see it as an opportunity to create a kindergarten to workforce pathway for these kids. And we sort of focus on the early intervention side of it, but it's the partnering with organizations like Decoding Dyslexia and our co-founder in the Dyslexic Edge, George Mason's College of Science, that we see as critical to making sure these kids get what they need.
Well, and your Science Saturdays. So what fascinated me the first time I interviewed you was not just that you're doing remediation as an after-school program, but you have actually taken these students out to places, the Naval Observatory, I think, all these wonderful places where they meet professional people who have dyslexia.
Right, and that was something, so, they've met a whole variety of people, mechanical engineers, STEM professionals, and I think it's just such an inspiration both to them and to their families, right, to see that they're going to be okay, that there is this pathway. And one of the things, too, that comes out of those Science Saturdays is, the students observing that there are people in this world that believe in them, even people that don't have dyslexia who are supporting these events, supporting them, and that has been a big boost to their confidence as well.
I think one of the great things to celebrate after this November's elections, too, is that Rachna Sizemore Heiser was elected to the Fairfax County School Board, and her son is autistic, very gifted musician. But she recognized early on that her son's struggles were a struggle of many, many families. And part of that is the focus on remediation over strengths building, because she's always said, they spent so much time trying to remediate all of his deficits that they didn't, cultivate or promote the fact that he is a very gifted musician and that he has a future in music,
right.
But so much of his day is being taken up. And to your point about confidence, making him feel like he has more deficits than he has talents and gifts. And so I think we're going to see that Rachna is going to bring a different perspective to how we look at policies around remediation and supports, but recognizing that students need to have a substantial amount of their school day devoted to cultivating what they do well.
Yes,
Right.
strength-based.
Strength-based, that's
Yes.
exactly it, strength-based inclusion.
Yes.
And so that kind of brings us to this whole point of this conference, the partnership with the College of Science. So talk a little bit about how you first connected with Tracy
Right.
at the College of Science, how this was born.
Right, so the conference was born, Tracy Mason, who's the Director of Strategic Communications at the College of Science, we have a mutual connection who brought me to the College of Science, and she was instantly captivated by this idea that these children are gifted in STEM. And she really wanted to create a cutting edge event around this. And so every good idea comes from a whiteboarding session. And so we came up with this concept of bringing together not just educators and families, but industry, right? To really engage in this conversation of neurodiversity and what does it mean to get these kids to really follow their strengths and their passions. And Tracy has been such an instrumental part of all this, and so it's great to have those kind of partners, in the community.
Absolutely. And so you've developed different things. I know that I moderated the students panel last year, and it was the feedback was great, except that the parents were like, we need more peer-to-peer opportunities to ask questions. And so now we're adding a parent panel this year.
Yes.
So you two are veterans. You've lived this for a long time. But people who came to the conference last year are just starting out, and they're bewildered and frustrated and confused, and they don't know what to do and where to turn, and which only showcases the need for us to have more resources, better screening, and more supports at the ready for these families in our school systems. So what are some of the other things that kind of grew out of the feedback from last year's conference?
Well, I think some of the feedback we got was folks wanted to have an opportunity to get to more sessions. And so we went from this half-day template to a full-day opportunity where we're going to have not only the sessions, we added more presenters, added more rooms. We have had an opportunity to have some of the same presenters doing either the same session or a bit of a tweak, but within the same subject group. So we think that the attendees that are coming are going to be able to learn run the gamut on, you can come and learn what is dyslexia, and then in the next session, have this collaborative conversation with workforce and industry folks who will, have ultimately understand the importance of these kids that need to go. And I really liked what Krista said. I think it was K to workforce, that we need to give our students the tools that they need because they are capable and successful to ultimately meet their potential.
And how are you doing outreach? I mean, as far as, you need to do outreach to the families, but also to educators and to your speakers.
Right. So, gosh, it seems to be very much the embodiment of grassroots because, one of the things and part of the reason we added the extra half day was we were so surprised how much this caught on even after just 1 year. So there were speakers and sponsors who actually approached us that we didn't even, solicit. And it has been so, and I think it speaks to the positive nature of the conference. I think that was one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got last year was, or parents just saying, thank you for making me feel like my child's going to be okay and showing this pathway, and having these conversations. And so that kind of grew into this, we haven't done a whole lot of marketing, to be honest. Social media has been fantastic, but for the most part, we've had a lot of people approach us, which is great.
Well, word of mouth marketing is always the best, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
a personal referral.
Right.
Yeah, and people showed up last year knowing what the conference was about and ready to participate. People were very open last year, I thought.
Yes, very much, very much. I think one of the, parents were coming up. Even my husband tells a story of someone coming up to him and just with tears in her eyes, just saying, this is the most amazing day because I've learned so much about how my child thinks, and I know he's going to be okay.
I think that's wonderful because, no one expects to have a child that's different. You have this baby and you think you know what it's all going to be about. And then you find that, your child is struggling, and there is nothing, I think, harder for a parent to have a child that is struggling because it hurts their self-esteem and it hurts their confidence. It's not just the grades they're making in school. And then you feel ill-equipped to know what to say or to do or to how to work with the public school teachers too. And when we come back from our break, I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing for educators, because it has come to many people's attention that not everybody got training of any kind in working with dyslexic students in their teacher training. So after the break, join us.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Of great books here today. There's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing.
Wow! I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark. That was awesome! Let's go again. 3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Science Center.
we'll talk about the STEM Palooza.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we are talking about the Dyslexic Edge Conference, which will be held at George Mason University on Saturday, March the 21st. Two of the organizers are here with me today, Shannon Duncan of Decoding Dyslexia Virginia, and Krista Gauthier, who is the founder and executive director of Sliding Doors. So we were talking about the need to help support families and the fact that a lot of educators are as frustrated too because not everybody got this in their training. And so you've got parents trying to work with teachers and teachers trying to work with these families, but a conference like this brings lots of people with different expertise. So I want to talk a little bit about the program, who you've got on the program, and what some of these workshops actually are. Krista?
Sure. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we talked about parents in the last segment, but educators are equally, important in this. And we have speakers coming in that are talking about not only things like evaluating for dyslexia, because as you mentioned, the training for them isn't necessarily there. So it's an opportunity for them to learn what the signs are, how to detect it. But we also have people coming to talk about things like hands-on STEM education, right? And multisensory math and all of these different tools that they can add to their tool bag in order to access more learners and help these kids in their classrooms.
But the thing about that too is that what's good for a student with dyslexia is good for everybody.
Yes.
So multisensory math isn't just collecting up and supporting these particular students, it's supporting all students who learn differently, even if they do not have something we label a disability. And this is what I find in many things. When you make it more accessible and easier for a particular group, guess what? It suddenly got easier for everybody else too.
Right, exactly.
So your keynote speaker?
So yeah, we're very excited for our keynote speaker. So Cliff Weitzman is coming in. He is the inventor of an app called Speechify. And it's an app that converts text to speech and is amazing. It's a wonderful assistive technology tool, but the greatest part of Cliff's story is that he's dyslexic. And so he invented this app based on his own experiences as a college student with dyslexia. And I think what Cliff will bring to the conference is not just what Speechify is and his story around that, but just listening to his story will be such an inspiration for all of our audience. And I mean, I think back to even my original conversation with him where his focus was actually learning more about my own experience and my daughter's and telling me how I can help her than it was working out the logistics of the or the conference. I think he is just somebody who's going to come and really inspire everybody who's there.
Yeah, and there's so many people that Albert Einstein. I mean, there's a list of very famous, very accomplished people who had dyslexia either diagnosed or not in their lifetime,
right,
who have made such an impact in our world. And I don't think students necessarily, see those people held up as an example of the fact that it might be more difficult, but there's people who have accomplished enormous things in their lives, working and adapting and building the strengths necessary to move forward.
And it brings it back, I don't mean to interrupt, but it brings it back, as you say, that it brings it back to the self-esteem piece. If our kids can have high self-esteem and full of confidence because we've been focused on their strengths, while not saying, at the same time, you give them the tools they need in order to be successful and reach their potential, but when you can focus on their strengths and have them feel good, then they're going to have grit and they're going to be determined and they're going to be in a place where they're happy to take a chance.
And I think that's one of the things that came out of the student panel last year was how many of these students have become great self-advocates.
Yes.
It's not just that they're, when you're very little in kindergarten, yes, your mom and your dad come and they try to get the resources that you need. But by the time you get to be 5th, 6th grade, by the time you're in high school, suddenly you're saying, this is what I need from my teacher. This is what, and we heard that from a lot of students. I think your daughter was one of them, who was like, don't give me this work that you think I need when it's too easy for me and I'm not interested in it, but I could use help in another way. And so these students are learning to say what they need and what they don't need.
Right.
Yes.
And what a gift and what a skill, because that's not something that necessarily is we teach in public schools, is how to be your own best self-advocate. And there were students on that panel last year who were very gifted, and your daughter was very articulate
thank
too.
you.
And Melinda's son, he's
Yes.
going.
Yes.
That guy's going places. Will is going places. And that's the thing about too. I think the adults in the room hearing how how articulate they were, and trying to help people understand what their experience has been, both good and bad. And I wish more educators could hear that, like what has been helpful and what is not helpful.
Right. Well, we do have a session on assistive technology, and then we're going to have a workshop that will be pretty focused on Microsoft specifically. But when you can level the playing field and tweak the environment, I mean, that's a lot of the conversation that I have with my daughter, who now is a master self-advocate in 11th grade. But she knows what it feels like to be academically successful, and she just knows she needs the environment tweaked slightly. So she's happy to go out and make that happen for herself, so that if she's sitting next to someone who is eye reading, she knows she can ear read, and she could be using Cliff Whiteman's Speechify to access the text.
And there were other things that have come out too along the way about testing environments. We talk about environments, testing environments, and what you do to try to accommodate students who need a different environment ends up helping everybody else in the room.
Yes.
Even though it was directed for this small group of students, suddenly everybody's like, "Oh, this is so much better. It's so much easier." Or
allows you to prove mastery efficiently.
Yeah, it really does. And so, taking the bull by the horns on the big issues like better testing, early testing, universal testing. For the parents who are coming to this conference, they've had a mixed experience, but I'd say most of them are at this conference because they're frustrated and they're looking for information. And still, after all the visibility all of us have tried to give to this and the tools and the resources, they're still coming back saying, it's so frustrating. And so moving through this process, is part of this conference really going to be directed at getting people to advocate, as Decoding Dyslexia is an all-volunteer organization made up of parents.
Right.
Helping parents have the tools to say, our school should be doing this, or the school board should have resources or specialists or tools to do this earlier for everyone.
Yeah. So, I would say knowledge is power. And that's part of what Decoding would do. Is Decoding Dyslexia wants to make sure parents understand what their rights are, that they understand what dyslexia is. I think that's the first thing we say to folks. We send them out to really reliable resources to make sure they can gather the information that they need. And I think that this conference is going to empower families and teachers, families and educators, so that they understand not only the base information, but we'll have a session on the state of dyslexia in Virginia. We also have a session on, and this is maybe too in the weeds, but balanced literacy versus whole language. So we have some folks coming in and showing you, structured literacy, balanced literacy versus structured literacy being the best practice that we're looking for, and balanced literacy, unfortunately, being what's in a lot of our public schools. And so, again, knowledge is power. So I really think that they're going to have an opportunity to take information on Saturday the 21st and then go engage in their community.
Absolutely.
And from your perspective, anybody who wants to be part of your Science Saturdays, you're always looking for partners, obviously, too, and support for the STEM program.
Right. And one of the things that we're about to embark on is a rather ambitious project, but and it will probably take a good portion of time. But when I started this organization, it was to really level the playing field for anybody of any socioeconomic level, because people who have the means and the resources and the access, get their child what they need generally. And 48% of the prison population has dyslexia. And so when you think about that number, we are just doing not only a disservice to those students, but we are also doing a disservice to all of us because of their brilliance and their gifts, and we're not giving them a platform and a pathway to really shine. And so we are about to start really trying to build a center that it will be free for anyone on free and reduced lunch. And so anybody who wishes to partner with us on that, we're looking for industry partners more than anything.
That is fantastic.
Yes.
It really is. And you are quite right. People with resources can always get the enrichment programs, the tutors, everything they need, the tools they need. It is the students who are the most economically disadvantaged. And that fits too with the Fairfax County equity program. One Fairfax, and looking through an equity lens to say, are we meeting everybody's needs, but particularly are we making sure that we are capturing those students who are most disadvantaged in the county?
Right. And I think, people, one of the things that we really try to talk about quite a bit is literacy is an equity issue. And, that is the gateway to so much. And so, if we can do anything to open that gate, we're happy to do it.
And so we should remind people again that, thedyslexicedge.org is the place to find the workshops, all of your speakers, location information, and the fact that anything that changes or gets added between now and Saturday the 21st, the updates will be there.
Yes, and also on our Facebook.
Yes, so your Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it's open to the entire community, and I think we should encourage people who may know of families where they may be struggling with this. Word of mouth. People should be inspired to say, I saw this show and there's this conference right here in Fairfax, right in Fairfax County.
Absolutely.
That is open to everyone.
Right. And one thing too that we do for this event that families I think would be interested in is we also do a STEM festival in the afternoon.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So it's that really embracing that showcasing of strengths and building of confidence. And so we're kicking it off this year. The Children's Science Center is
they are wonderful.
They're fantastic, and they're coming and doing their stage show to kick the whole thing off. And then students will have the opportunity to visit booths with a whole different variety of STEM activities and participate in engineering challenges. And so even if people can't make the conference, we invite families to come to that festival.
Oh, that's great that you've got this STEM festival. The Children's Science Center is on fire. They're building their new center.
Yes.
I've done a show with them too. They're building a center because there was no Children's Science Center in Northern Virginia. And it doesn't there's so many things that surprise me. I was talking before the show that, Chap Peterson was saying they're trying to get a medical school affiliated with George Mason University because there isn't one in Northern Virginia. And it's like, well, I never sat and thought about where are the medical schools in Virginia? And there's generally one in the center of the state.
Right.
But now we're starting to think, Northern Virginia is a very populous place. We have our school system is like the 10th largest in the nation. Right. So we need to start thinking in terms of having and developing and contributing more resources to the people who are here.
Right, absolutely. And I think when we always say that sliding doors is the speedboat, right? That it'll take a long time to turn the aircraft carrier, right? So we created something that could get in there now to provide what people need now, so that as we work with other organizations to build change and to turn the aircraft carrier, right? We're not missing an entire generation of kids.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you both. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Krista. And for the folks at home, it's thedyslexicedge.org for information about the second annual Dyslexic Edge Conference at George Mason University.